So Brahmasutra, Chatushutri. Brahmasutra is also called Shariraka Mimamsa. That is a very important name for it. So when we say Shariraka Mimamsa, Sharira is the body, the upadhis. Sharira, that which is associated with the body. That which is identified with the body. That which takes itself to be one with the body. That which has got abhimana with the body. Tadatmya with the body. Tadatmya is identification. So when we say Sharira, we are referring to the Jiva. Sharire bhavaha Sharira. Sharire bhavaha, that which resides in the body. Sharire bhavaha. So Sharira, then you have Shariraka. Shariraka is added there. That ka is to refer to this very same jiva, Sharira, ignorant nature. It's kutsita nature. That ka is that kutsita. Kutsita refers to that fallen nature. The jiva in its real nature is the ultimate reality, is Brahman itself. But because of this tadatmya, it has attained a lower nature. Its nature is defiled, kutsita. So Sharira eva Sharirakaha. That which is Sharira, meaning that which is Jiva, that itself is referred to as Shariraka. Why? Kutsitatvat. Because of its defiled nature. So you are able to understand Sharira, then Sharira, then Shariraka. Shariraka Mimamsa. Mimamsa is the enquiry. Mimamsa, enquiry. But what is unique about this enquiry? The very word Mimamsa refers to an enquiry which is auspicious. An enquiry which is highly regarded. Pujita vicharaha. Why is this enquiry held in that regard? Because this enquiry is so great, is so high in its stature, that one understands by the enquiry into the jiva that this jiva is Brahman itself. This enquiry brings out such a result where all finitude of the jiva is broken once and for all, and the jiva comprehends its true nature to be the infinite reality. All the Mahavakyas of the Upanishads declare this truth. All Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Ayam Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma, and all the various other Mahavakyas also which are found in all the Upanishads. all of them highlight this fact that the Jiva is Brahman. And how does this Jiva gain this knowledge of being Brahman? By vichara. Right? And that is why Shariraka Mimamsa is also called Brahmasutra. That which we use to inquire is Sutra. The Sutras enable the inquiry. Therefore, Mimamsa, you have the word Sutra. What is actually Sutra? Sutra is a medium of exploring the truths in the shortest possible words. It's a special system of composition whereby many thoughts are brought together, and those thoughts are inquired into. So Sutra, when you say, that itself means it has got many things inside that for inquiry. Sutra definition is well known. Swalpaksharam asantigdam saravad vishvato mukham astobham anavadyam sutram sutravido viduhu. This definition you will find in the book. I am not going to explain. You should remember, this is the third session in the series. So, Sutra helps in Mimamsa. And therefore, you have this usage of Shariraka Mimamsa referred to as Sutra. That Mimamsa referred to as Sutra because what is being inquired into is the Sutra. Now, what is being inquired into is Sutra because Sutra contains various inputs for inquiry, that is fine. But when you look at this Sutra, Brahmasutras or Shariraka Mimamsa Sutras, what are these sutras containing for inquiry? They contain for inquiry the Upanishad Vakyas, Vedanta Vakyas. So Vedanta Vakyas, when we say Vedanta Vakya, we are referring to Upanishad Vakya because Vedanta is a term for primarily Upanishad. Vedanto nama Upanishad Pramanam. That is the primary. Tad Upakarini Shariraka Sutradini cha. There also you see the word Shariraka Sutradini is the word used there. This is a famous definition of what is Vedanta in the text Vedanta Sara. So, the Sutra contains Vedanta Vakyas to be inquired into. And that is how Bhagavan Bhashyakara would say, we will be studying that, he would say Vedanta Vakya Kusuma Gratanartatvat Sutranam. Sutra is a thread, right? So what does a sutra do? Sutra threads. What does it thread? It threads the Vedanta Vakya, which are the flowers. So when you have a thread, with that you thread the flowers and you make a garland. So what does each sutra do? Each sutra threads an n number of Vedanta Vakyas. Threading those Vedanta Vakyas, the sutra itself is like a garland. Okay? Each sutra takes many Vedanta Vakyas and threads them together to make a garland. So when we say sutra, now so many things are there. Sutra is, it contains many inputs for inquiry. That is, Sutra also means thread. What does it thread? It threads the flowers. Okay, what are the flowers? The flowers are the Vedanta Vakyas. When you say Vedanta Vakyas, they are the Upanishad Vakyas. Brahmasutra is an inquiry into the Upanishadic thoughts. Wherever in Upanishads doubts can arise, those doubts are taken up and resolved in the Brahmasutra. And therefore, what does the Sutra do? The Sutra threads the various statements of the Upanishads for us to inquire into. Right? So, Sutra. So, Brahma Sutra, you have Shariraka, Mimamsa. Now, this Mimamsa, inquiry into the Sutras. And this Shariraka is one with Brahman. The Shariraka is one with Brahman, the Jiva is one with Brahman. So, you inquire into the Shariraka with the help of the Sutras, which are nothing but Vedanta Vakyas collected together for inquiry. And what is the result we gain? That Shariraka becomes Brahma. And thus you have the Shariraka Mimamsa, also called as the Brahmasutra, by which it is so well known. But if you look at the Bhashya and all, you will find Shariraka Mimamsa will be the word used. So how many sutras are there? So if you look like each sutra itself is like a garland. So garland over garland after garland, and all together becoming a mega garland is a Brahmasutra. Each sutra is a garland, remember that. Sometimes you have such a big garlands made where each one of it itself is a garland. And then the arrangement is such a beautiful decoration for Bhagavan is done. So like that you have the entire corpus of the Brahmasutra. Well, out of these Brahmasutras, how many Brahmasutras? 555 Brahmasutras. We are studying the Chatussutri. The Chatussutri is the first 4 sutras. What are the first 4 sutras? First sutra is Atha Brahma Jijnasa. Then second sutra is Janmadyadhikarana Yataha. Third sutra is Shastra Yonitvat. Fourth sutra is Tattu Samanvayat. During Vidyarambha, Aksharabhyasa, not Aksharabhyasa, what can you say? Vijayadashmi day, you might have heard some of these sutras. The traditional puja, you will find them being said, along with I, you, and all the way. Then you will find these 4 sutras also. Well, so what is so great about these 4 sutras, first 4 sutras? These first 4 sutras contain the essence of the entire Vedanta Shastra, especially along with the commentary of Bhagavan Bhashyakara Sri Adi Shankaracharya. So these 4 sutras with the Bhashya become a complete treatise by itself on Vedanta. So these sutras are arranged in Adhikaranas. You have 191 Adhikaranas. a few sutras, a sutra. Sometimes one sutra itself can become a Adhikarana. Adhikarana means topic. It's a technical word. An Adhikarana is a topic. It should have 5 limbs. Adhikarana has 5 limbs. The first limb is called as Vishaya. That Shanmukha Sha, Vishaya. Vishaya is subject. What is subject here? The subject is the Vedanta Vakya is the subject. The Vedanta Vakyas themselves become the subject. That is the Vishaya. Then you have the second limb of it, which is Vishaya. Sha is the Shankaracharya. Vishaya. Also you can call it a Samshaya. Whether you have the Upasarga Sam or whether you have the Upasarga V, it does not change the meaning to that Shaya. It means doubt. So there is a Vedanta Vakyas. One Vedanta Vakya seems to say something like this. Another Vedanta Vakya, Upanishad Vakya, seems to say something like this. So you have a doubt with respect to what is the message, what is the truth. That doubt is called as Samshaya or Vishaya. So Vishaya, then Purva Paksha. Purva Paksha is the thought promulgated, advocated by whom? Advocated in ignorance. That is Purva Paksha. Like how you have Manas Buddhi, is it not? Manas is what? Thoughts which are in dilemma. And the thoughts which are in dilemma, when we give sufficient thought to those thoughts, then what happens? It becomes clear. The very same thoughts which are in dilemma are called manas, and the very same thoughts which come to a certain conclusion, we call it as buddhi. Same way, Purva Paksha is our thoughts in ignorance. Purva Paksha is our thinking which has not become perfected. And that very same imperfect thinking, when we inquire into, when we see the fault of it and we perfect it, that becomes what is called Siddhanta. So Siddhanta is what? Siddhanta is a conclusive thinking. Purva Paksha is the initial thinking. Siddhanta is a conclusive thought. Sometimes this Purva Paksha is also referred to as opponent. Say Purva Paksha, opponent. Why? Because those are thoughts which are advocated by others also in ignorance, without coming to a right conclusion. So you have the opposing thought. Opposing to what? Opposing to the fact which is opposing. So you have Purva Paksha. Then you have Siddhanta. So what this is, Siddhanta is the fourth limb. Is it not? Adhikarana is a topic. Adhikarana is a topic. Each topic we said has got 5 limbs. First limb is what? Vishaya. What do you mean Vishaya there? The Vedanta Vakyas which we are going to inquire into are called as Vishaya. Then Samshaya or Vishaya. What is it? That is the doubt we have. What is it? What is it saying? What is it communicating? Is it communicating this or this? So like that you have a doubt. That is called Vishaya. Then you have a mistaken opinion. That is called as Purva Paksha. Then you have the conclusion, which is Siddhanta. Siddhanta itself means conclusion. This is the fourth limb. And then you have the fifth limb, which is called as Sangati. What is Sangati? Sangati is connection. when you have many Adhikaranas, many topics placed together, how is each topic connected to the next topic? Like that, when you look at connections, many kinds of connections are there, but when you look at these connections, how it is associated, how each one adds on together to build the huge edifice of the Vedantic philosophy. Like how each brick is connected to the other brick, and together they come together. Right? Like that, Sangati is association or connection. So these 5 together is called Adhikarana. We said Brahmasutras are 555. We said all the 555 sutras are arranged as 191 Adhikaranas. Each Adhikarana has got these 5 limbs. And all these 191 sutras are arranged within Adhikaranas. The first sutra itself, for the first sutra itself becomes Adhikarana. That is called as Jijnasa Adhikarana. Jijnasa Adhikarana. The sutra is Atha Brahma Jijnasa. So Jijnasa plus Adhikarana becomes Jijnasa Adhikarana. The second sutra itself also is an Adhikarana by itself. So the second sutra we are going to study, Janmadyadhikarana. What is the Adhikarana of it? Janmadyadhikarana. Janmadi asya yataha. Asya yataha. So Janmadi plus Adhikarana, Janmadyadhikarana, Janmadyadhikarana. Just the sandhi, that's all. So first Adhikarana is called Jijnasa Adhikarana. Second Adhikarana is called Janmadyadhikarana. Janmadi is there. Janmadi is the first word of the sutra. Janmadyasya yataha, Janmadi. So Janmadi. First word is there. So with that you add the Adhikarana. Janmadi plus Adhikarana, Janmadyadhikarana. Okay. So before we go into the sutra, you all know, you all have studied that first was the Adhyasa Bhashya, then you had the Jijnasa Adhikarana, first sutra, right? And now we come to the second sutra. This Adhyasa Bhashya, if you carefully see, first sutra is Atha Brahma Jijnasa. To that sutra you have this prefatory note, this introduction, which is Adhyasa Bhashya. So far, have you all been able to understand whatever was said? Information here and there, but all important. If you see the first sutra, what is the first sutra? Atha Brahma Jijnasa. Ataha Brahma Jijnasa. Atha thereafter, Ataha because, thereafter, therefore, because or therefore, Brahma Jijnasa, the inquiry into Brahman. Right? So this is how the first sutra is. Thereafter, therefore, the inquiry into Brahman. What it means we will see. We have seen, but we will just see in short also, not a problem. To this, Shankaracharya writes the Adhyasa Bhashya. What is the Adhyasa Bhashya about? Adhyasa Bhashya establishes that there is Adhyasa. That is what it does. Shankaracharya has not given the title Adhyasa Bhashya. We are giving it the title Adhyasa Bhashya. That Bhashya which deals with Adhyasa, we call it as Adhyasa Bhashya. And what is this whole section? Yushmad Asmad Pratyaya Gocharayoho Vishaya Vishayinoho. The whole section. What is it deal about? What does it show? What does it? It says that there is Adhyasa. Now, by saying that there is Adhyasa, what is he proving? What is Shankaracharya achieving as an introduction? The first sutra says, the inquiry into the self leads to the knowledge of the self as Brahman. That is the first sutra. The inquiry into the self leads to the knowledge of the self as Brahman. Now, if this sutra has to actually function, meaning the inquiry into the self leads to the knowledge of the self as Brahman, would have to mean, if this first sutra if it has to be actually in this way, then one thing is very sure, today we have got a misunderstanding of ourselves. Any inquiry, when we say Brahma Jijnasa, when we say inquiry into Brahman, when we say, an inquiry can be there only if there is a mistaken understanding is there, a mistaken notion is there. Without ignorance and the notions of ignorance, how can inquiry be done? Therefore, in Adhyasa Bhashya, Shankaracharya establishes there is ignorance of the self. That's the first thing he establishes. Now, also please note, unless there is sandeha, unless there is something which is of doubtful understanding, inquiry cannot begin. So first thing he establishes, the so-called I about we, the notion we have about ourselves, the jiva, is that notion, is that idea valid? Do you think it is true? Do you think the present notion that we have of oneself is correct? Like that, he starts creating some kind of cracks in our present conviction. Unless those cracks are created, the need for inquiry will not be felt. I know myself. What is the need to inquire into myself? So when it is shown that, look, today you are taken yourself to be something else you are not. Yushmad asmad pratyaya gocharayoho Vishaya Vishayinoho Tavah Prakashavad Viruddha Swabhavayoho. He says one is the subject, another is the object. Yushmad Asmad. One is the subject. Which is subject here? Asmad is subject. Another is the object. So you have the object and then you have the subject. And these two things are different from each other. I, the subject, and body, the object. Subject, object, they are very, very distinct. This is a very, very simple thing to understand, that the object which is perceived cannot be the subject which is perceiving. The perceiver and the perceived have to be distinct from each other. This is a very, very clear, simple comprehension. I am not what I see. If I am not what I see the body and I take myself to be the body, and then I say, Aham Deha, I am the body, Aham Idam, Idam is object. Aham is a subject. But then we couple this subject and object and we have the comprehension of oneself as I am the body. Aham idam, mama idam. And then the properties of the body become my nature. In this way, what have I done? Satya, Anruta, Mituni Kritya. I have coupled the self with that which is not the self, and I have brought them together, and I have a single perception of myself as a body, even though I is the subject, object is the body. Subject and object are different. Not only subject and object are different, in this case, if you look, when you see very clearly, one is of the nature of consciousness, another is inert. One is consciousness, another is made up of the elements, the 5 elements, and it is inert. Tamah prakashavad viruddha svabhavayo. They are distinct from each other. But then I have brought them together, and my experience is ahamidam. I am the body. So even though this kind of mixing can never happen actually, it should not happen actually. Anybody who is intelligent will not consider oneself to be what one sees, what one experiences. But here we have done that mistake. Therefore, is the idea that we have of ourselves right? Haven't we created a problem? Is there not a mistaken notion of oneself? Is there not? And this mistaken notion of oneself has come about because of Adhyasa. What is Adhyasa? Adhyasa is seeing something as something else. Atasmin stad buddhihi. Remember, he is helping us identify the problem. Without understanding a problem, there cannot be a solution. And if inquiry has to happen, we have to clearly understand that there is ignorance. So once he shows, yes, this should not happen, but it has happened. What should not have happened? This mistaken notion of oneself should not have been there. Because very clearly subject and object are different. But my experience, if I see, is what? I am the body. This is my experience. How do I say I am the body? When I have a headache, I say I have headache. Even though I say ache in the head, I say I have a headache, right? Every notion of myself is rooted in this ignorance. He establishes that very clearly in the Adhyasa Bhashya. So Adhyasa Bhashya, by establishing ignorance, shows that the present notion of oneself is false, necessitating an inquiry, Jijnasa. Inquiry would never be undertaken unless there is a doubt which is established prior to the inquiry. There is a doubt. So here what is established? There is a doubt about myself. Who am I? The doubt is established. Who am I? Is not clear. Why who am I is not clear? Because when I say I am the body, one part of I am is the object. Another part of I am is the subject. Subject and object cannot be one, but subject and object is made one. Therefore, there is a problem. There is something to be inquired into. So, Adhyasa Bhashya, by establishing that there is superimposition of the nature of the subject and the object, by establishing that the subject's nature has been transferred to the object and the object's nature has been transferred to the subject. Consciousness belongs to me, but I see the body is also conscious. So consciousness, which is my nature, is seen in the body. The body, which has got a form, is taken to me, that which is consciousness, subject. Subject consciousness has no form by itself. But now what is happening? That I is seen to be with a form. So this transposing of each one's nature to each other, this anyonya adhyasa. It's not just adhyasa, it is anyonya adhyasa. It is not an easy thing, it is a complex problem. Do you understand this anyonya adhyasa? Anya adhyasa, anyonya adhyasa. Anya is other. Two things are separate. Other. But this one appears to be this one appears to be this. Both of them have come together. Satyanrute mitini kritya aham idam mama idam. And this is what so natural to us. So natural to us. We have not even thought about it. We are living our life just like this. Naisargikoyam lokavyavahara. This is so prevalent, lokavyavahara. It is the universal virus. That is what he established. And it has become so natural and so taken for granted that we have not paid attention to it even the least. How dangerous. He brings it to our attention. And now by showing how dangerous it is, how it is the source of all problems, how once we become jiva, then we are in samsara, and all our samsara is rooted on this wrong notion of who one is. Why? Suppose one takes oneself to be the body, mind and senses, one becomes limited. When one is limited, truly one is unlimited. But taking oneself to be the body, mind and senses, one becomes limited. And all our effort is what? To come to our true nature of being unlimited. Because we are unlimited. By mistake we have taken ourselves to be limited. Now we want to go back to our nature of being unlimited. That is natural only. Everything tends to its own nature. In physics also you have a law like that. Everything tends to its own nature. Now everything tends to its own nature. So what has happened now? I want to be unlimited. Now when I want to be unlimited, I try to get more and more objects to become unlimited. I try to become more and more happy by going towards the objects. Because I want to get happiness. And then what happens? Then the actions are undertaken to become unlimited. Desires are aggravated to become unlimited. And then actions will have results. Now once the actions will have results, then I who have performed those actions should also be available to get the results. Then one more birth. Because the results of all actions are not exhausted in one birth. So one more birth. And is it ending there? No. One more. In this way, anadihi, anantaha. When I look like that, it has been like this from ever. And it is going to be like this also forever. Anadihi, anantaha. And every action that I undertake is based on this notion wrong notion of who I am. So this virus has so much become part and parcel of me that it is me, and it is creating such a mess of everything. Right? This is a anartha hetu, he would say. Kartrutva, bhoktritva, pravartakaha. Causes kartrutva, causes bhoktritva, and takes samsara. On and on it goes. And therefore, when I inquire into my true nature, I put an end to all these problems and I come to my true nature of being limitless. Remember, inquiring into my true nature, inquiring into who I am, leads to my true nature of being limitless. What is happening? I am inquiring into myself, and this inquiry is leading to what? Leading to my nature as Brahman. So, inquiry when can inquiry put an end to problem? Inquiry can put an end to a problem only if the problem is not real. Problem is false. I have mistaken the rope to be snake and I have so many problems. Now I inquire into what am I seeing and I find out that that snake is but a rope. Now the inquiry puts an end to problem. Where inquiry puts an end to problem? Only because I have mistaken the rope to be snake. If it was an actual snake, the inquiry into it is not going to put an end to problem. Inquiry can solve the problem only if the problem is false. A real problem cannot be solved by an inquiry. Action is required. A real problem, yes, there also inquiry is required. But inquiry plus action is required. Only then the problem will be solved. Because it is a real problem. But here the problem is solved by inquiry. Why? The problem is not actual. The problem is not real. The problem is, I am not going to use the word. The problem is imaginary. Imaginary problems are solved by inquiry alone, without action, and real problems are solved by inquiry plus actions. So if I find out that if it is an actual snake, yes, I inquire, it is actually a snake. Now what should I do? I should take an action about it. I should find a way by which I get the snake out. Then the problem is solved. But if I have taken a rope to be snake and I have all problem, my pressure has gone up and I am about to faint and then I am about... Now just they show me that it is not a snake but a rope. Now the problem is solved. My pressure also comes down. Everything comes down. Why? Because the problem is not true. The problem is imagined. Superimposition, Adhyasa, also is a imagination. It's one type of imagination. It's one type of falsity. Therefore, by establishing Adhyasa, what is Shankaracharya proving? Shankaracharya is saying, look, Atha Brahma Jijnasa, inquiry into the self. You come to the nature of Brahman. Inquiring into yourself, you become Brahman. How that is possible? Inquiring into myself, I become Brahman. Inquiring into Jiva, I become Brahman. How is it possible? If inquiry into Jiva will make me Brahman, it only means that I have taken myself falsely to be the Jiva. That's what it means. Therefore, by Adhyasa Bhashya, by establishing there is Adhyasa, Shankaracharya establishes knowledge can solve the problem. Inquiry alone can solve the problem. Inquiry alone with no additional requirement of action can solve the problem. So, in order that Atato Brahma Jijnasa is justified, you need to show first of all that there is Adhyasa. You need to show that the problem is imaginary. You need to show that the understanding of ourselves today is false. And this is established by Adhyasa Bhashya. So the first sutra, Athato Brahma Jijnasa, has got the perfect introduction as Adhyasa Bhashya. Jijnasa requires, inquiry requires doubt. Adhyasa Bhashya, the possibility of doubt is established. Because today what I have understood myself is not correct. There is a doubt about what it is. I do not, I'm not, what I have taken, I say it always, but I'm not sure who am I. I'm not sure who I am. This sandeha is created. Now, inquiry also will not be undertaken if there is no concrete result which will come out of it. Prayojana should be there. Because inquiry is a mental action. Nobody takes up an action without a result in view. Simply nobody will inquire. There are people who can do that also. But people who have got some sense undertake an action with a result. When no result is pointed out, no action intelligent people will undertake. Prayojanam anuddishya mandopi na pravartate. Even a fool will not take up an action unless there is a result he sees concretely at the end of it. Now in Adhyasa Bhashya, what is proved also, that this Adhyasa is a severe problem is established. It's an anartha hetu is established. And therefore, putting an end to it by inquiry gives a result of fulfillment that is established. So Adhyasa Bhashya establishes doubt. Adhyasa Bhashya establishes prayojana. Sandeha unprayojana, Adhyasa Bhashya establishes. And because first sutra says inquiry into oneself leading to the knowledge of the self as Brahman, that is only possible if the problem is illusory. Problem is imaginary. Adhyasa Bhashya establishes, I have an imaginary problem. Thank God I have an imaginary problem. All of you smile at least for that. I have an imaginary problem, not an actual problem. If I have an actual problem, my God, mere inquiry is not going to help. So if mere inquiry is going to solve the problem has to be imaginary. Superimposition is an imagination of what? Of one object as the other. Atasmin sadbuddhi. In not that, having the notion of that is called as adhyasa. In not snake, having the notion it is snake. In not snake means, in rope, having the notion it is snake is atasmin sadbuddhi. In the self, having the notion of body. In the body, having the notion of self. Anyonyadhyasa. This is the problem. And therefore, if I understand who I am really, yes, There is a problem, there is a solution. And how am I to understand who am I really? I have to understand who I am really. I have to understand myself not as a jiva. I have to understand that I am Brahman. This is the first sutra. So now that we have seen an overview of Adhyasa, let us also see an overview of the first sutra. Okay? What does the first sutra say? Atha, Ataha, Brahma Jijnasa. Atha. The word Atha means thereafter. Thereafter. What is thereafter here? Through various discussion, Shankaracharya finally establishes thereafter means after gaining viveka, vairagya, samadhi shatka sampatti, mumukshutva. In other words, after gaining the sadhana chatushtaya. So thereafter. Atha shabdaha anantaryartaha parigrihyate. The word atha indicates something coming before and then thereafter. So thereafter all means what? Thereafter means there is something which is happening and then thereafter. Right? So after gaining the sadhana chatushtaya. That is how you would say. What is that thereafter? What is that after gaining which this Brahma Jijnasa inquiry into Brahman works? Uchyate nityanitya vastu vivekaha iha mutrartha phalabhoga viragaha samadhi shatka sampattihi samadhi sadhana sampat mumukshutvam cha teshu hui satsu shakyate brahma jijnasitum jnatum cha. If this sadhana chatushtaya is there, one has a capacity to inquire into Brahman and gain the knowledge of Brahman. Jijnasitum jnatum cha. That will give the sufficient capacity, horsepower to do this, to get into this task. If there is a certain mathematical problem, then you need to have some mathematical knowledge to inquire into a mathematical problem. If there is let us say for example, some problem with respect to the stomach and all those things, then you need to have certain medical knowledge in order to inquire into how to solve that problem. Now this is not an object, you see. This is not a competency with respect to a certain accomplishment of the external world. This is inquiry into ourself. Now what is the competency required to inquire into ourself? Can I say mathematics, physics, chemistry, botany, zoology? Can I even say the knowledge of the Vedas? No. Can I say ability to perform the Vedic rites, karma avabodha? Please think yourself logically. Why this is said? You see? What should be said then? Nothing external can be said actually. Inquiry into oneself. Inquiry into oneself anyone should be able to do, right? Because it is oneself. Yes, anyone should be able to do. That is perfect. Anyone should be able to do. And therefore, self-knowledge is for everyone. Perfect. But yes, self-knowledge is for everyone because everyone has the self. And everyone has the means to inquire into it because the means to inquire into it is the mind and intellect. Because everyone has got mind and intellect. Self is there, everyone, because everyone is a self. Means to inquire is also mind only, mind and intellect. So, the capacity of the mind and intellect is only what is required. And what is the capacity of the mind and intellect? The capacity of the mind and intellect is an ability to focus. The ability to be, because inquiry means you have to focus and inquire. You can't be distracted. So there is a need to focus. There's a need to make the mind and intellect sharper. There's a need to make the mind and intellect restful in that inquiry. Not restless, restful in the inquiry. The mind is inquiring into the self. Suddenly the mind goes out to something else and wants this or that. Then what will happen? It cannot inquire into the self. So what is required is perfection of the mind and intellect equipment. That is the most logical answer. And that perfection of the mind and intellect is referred to as Viveka, Vairagya, Shama, Dama, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhana. And finally, to do anything, you need to have the power of desire. Because any action is powered by desire. Desire is the power of any action, every action. And here, what is it? It's a desire to know oneself. It is a desire to free oneself of ignorant notions. It's a desire to liberate myself out of the bondages which I have created for myself. Mumukshutva. Right? And therefore, the points which are mentioned as qualifications, thereafter one gets one inquires, one gets the capacity to inquire into the self. Thereafter one is able to realize the self as Brahman. So what is it thereafter? That thereafter cannot be any amount of knowledge which one can have of the external world, including the sacred Shastras. It has to be the perfection of the inner equipment. And therefore, this is what. See, at one end, we have to have desire. At the another end, you have to have desirelessness. Desire and desirelessness are like two sides of the same coin. Because when you say desire, it means desire, no desire for other things. And when you say no desire, then it means desire for something. So desire and desirelessness go together. That is how at one end you have Viveka and Vairagya, at another end you have Mumukshutva. So desirelessness is one end of the means, and desire is another end of the means, and in between comes all other means. So thus you have what is the Atha thereafter. Right? So, thereafter, now comes therefore. What do you mean by therefore? Because the Vedas themselves have guided you in the right direction. Because therefore because the Vedas themselves have guided you. Suppose you say, that is one meaning therefore, okay? Vedas themselves have guided you. How the Vedas themselves have guided you? The Vedas themselves have guided you that there is no permanent happiness possible with the external world. And there is permanent fulfillment possible from knowing oneself. Vedas themselves have guided you. Therefore, you don't have to have a doubt anymore. Therefore, the path is very clear. Therefore, the Vedas have given you the clarity in this regard. Therefore, so thereafter, after gaining that required, necessary mental and the various fine-tunings required in your own mind and intellect, because the mind and the intellect is a means to gain the knowledge of the self. Manasa eva idam aptavyam. Drishyate tvagraya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibihi. Therefore, you perfect your own mind and intellect with viveka vairagya shamadhi shatka sampatti mumukshutva. Become desireless, become desireful, get them together, and the rest of things will happen by itself. You become desireless, you become desireful, samadhana also will be there, focus also will be there. You become desireless, shama, dhamma and all those things will happen. So, and thus making one's own mind and intellect. And now what? Because the Vedas themselves have guided you. How to go about it? And what should one do? Inquire into Brahman. Inquire into Brahman means what? Inquire into some Brahman sitting somewhere? No. Inquire into how you are that Brahman. One cannot inquire into something which is perfectly known, because one need not inquire into. That which is perfectly known, what you inquire about it? This is Kauflet. Himalaya, Kauflet. Oh, yes, I know. Now what more? No, just read everything. There's some small letters written something. If those small letters are very clear, why would I inquire into? What is well known, one is not a fool to inquire into. What is totally unknown, one can never inquire into. Swamiji, this inquiry you are telling, where is this word inquiry? Where is this word inquiry? Atha is thereafter, right? Ataha is because, therefore. Brahma Jijnasa, Brahmanaha Jnatum Icha. Jnatum Icha is what? Desire to know. Desire to know Brahman. Desire to know Brahman. Okay, desire to know Brahman. This desire to know in its larger connotation is inquiry. Desire to know, therefore you start thinking. You start applying your spirit of inquiry. The desire to know in action becomes inquiry. Desire to know when you implement, it becomes inquiry. You cannot inquire unless you have the desire to know. You cannot fulfill your desire to know unless you inquire. So the desire to know alone becomes what is known as inquiry in its application, in its implementation. By lakshana, if you want to use a technical word, by lakshana, by implication. So, inquiry is not possible unless Inquiry is not possible if the something is totally known or totally unknown. In both these cases, inquiry is not possible. So, inquiry is possible only where I know, but I don't know. I know I don't know means what? I have a samanya jnana, but not the vishesha jnana. I have a knowledge, I have some kind of vagueness about it, but I don't have clarity about it. So vagueness means what? Some amount I know. Vagueness means what? I don't know it clearly, fully. We say samanya jnana, but absence of vishesha jnana. That is what at this point of time we have about ourselves. Nobody here can say, in fact, somebody knocks your door, or you knock somebody's door, and the other person asks, who is that? Immediately you say, I am. You won't say I am without knowing who you are. I am is the very foundation of every thought. I am is the foundation of every word. I am is the foundation of every action. The first thought I have when I get up in the morning is I am. And the last thought I put to sleep is I am. And even after I put the thought I am to sleep at night and then I go to sleep, I know the absence of the thought of I also. So when I get up in the morning, I know I was not there as what I am now. But I cannot say I was not there. I cannot say I was there. I was there, illumining the absence of the present way I experience I. So there is an I. There is an I which comes, there is an I which goes. And there is an I which remains, witnessing the coming and going of the I. Everyone has some idea of I. And no one can clearly say, this is what I am. Unless the Upanishads, unless the Guru, unless the Shastra comes to guide us, to show us who we are. And therefore, is Brahman, is the Atman, Prasiddha or Aprasiddha? Is it well known or is it not known at all? It doesn't fall in any of those two categories. And therefore, inquiry should be done to come to know the truth of it. And also inquiring about the nature of the self. You have so many notions among the philosophies. So many notions about the philosophies. Right from the Charvaka school, which takes oneself to body, and then the Charvakas also advance philosophically. Some claim themselves to be the senses, some claim themselves to be the mind, and then you have the Bauddha schools which claim themselves to be the thoughts. And then you have the school which says this I is a total zero, Shunya. Another school of Buddhism, the Shunyavadin. And then you have the school which says that it is Karta and Bhokta, Samsari, which takes birth, which takes embodiments after another. And then you have a school which says that it is only Karta but not Bhokta. The Sankhya school, for example. Like that, different. And then you have the Vedanta, which says it is a self of the Karta Bhokta. It's a very self which witnesses the individuality of the nature of Karta Bhokta. Bhoktuhu Atma iti apare. It is a self of even the Bhokta. So like that you have philosophically also. Generally when you analyze also you will find there's a lot of need for inquiry, and philosophy also you find a lot of difference of opinion, and in case one mistakenly takes up one philosophy or the other and goes that path without the inquiry, then what happens? One is lost. And therefore, what is important is we have to inquire into the true nature of the self with the help of the Vedanta. Tasmad Brahma Jijnasa Upanyasa Mukhena Vedanta Vakya Mimamsa Tat Avirodhi Tarkopakarana Nishreyasa Prayojana Prastuyate. Like that, in the first sutra, you found Bhagavan Shankaracharya concluding, therefore the need to inquire into the nature of the self. Therefore the need to inquire into the nature of Brahman as a self, with the help of the Upanishad Vakyas, with the help of logic which is supporting this kind of understanding. And hence you have the first sutra, Atha Brahma Jijnasa. Like this, he concluded the first sutra. Okay? So we have seen so far the Adhyasa Bhashya, its purpose, the first sutra, the ground which it has covered. What did the first sutra say? After gaining the required mental fine-tunings of the nature of Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi, Shatka, Sampatti, Mukshutva, and since the Upanishads themselves have shown you the way, since the Upanishad itself have clarified that karma cannot give you fulfillment, since the Upanishads themselves have clarified for you, knowing the self, Brahmavid apnoti param, one gets that ultimate. Since the Upanishads have already given that clarification, therefore, what should one do? One should inquire into the nature of the self. One should inquire into the nature of the self as Brahman. When we do not know Brahman, that Brahman is the Vishaya of Vedanta. Ajñātam Brahma Vishayam. And Jñātam Brahma becomes a Prayojana. So the first sutra also gives you the Adhikari Vishaya Sambandha Prayojana. The Anubandha Chatushtaya of Vedanta. Adhikari is expressed through that word Atha. Is it not? Is it not? By thereafter, you have the indication of Adhikari. What is this Adhikari Vishaya Sambandha Prayojana? Anubandha Chatushtaya you all know, right? Anubandha Chatushtaya. Adhikari Vishaya Sambandha Prayojana. Adhikari is coming from the word Atha. Now Vishaya Sambandha Prayojana, think. Where is Vishaya? Brahma Jijnasa. Brahma. And remember, Ajñātam Brahma. That Brahman which is not known. Meaning that self, when you do not know it as Brahman, that Brahma which is not known as self, that is a Vishaya. Vishaya. What is Prayojana? Brahma Jijnasa, Brahma. Vishaya also is found in Brahma Jijnasa, that word Brahma. Prayojana also is found in that word Brahma. Why? Ajñātam Brahma Vishayam, Jñātam Brahma Prayojanam. And where is Sambandha? Sambandha is found in Jijnasa. How Swamiji? Jijnasa is what? Brahmanaha, Brahma Jijnasa. Brahmanaha Jnatum Ichcha. The desire to know Brahman. And for the desire to know Brahman, what are we doing? We are studying the Brahmasutra. Right? Desire to know Brahman, we are studying the Brahmasutra. So the Brahmasutra becomes the Pratipadaka. The Brahmasutra becomes the Bodhaka. That which elucidates. That which gives. That which helps you. Right? Therefore, the Brahma Sutra becomes the Pratipadaka or Bodhaka, and that Brahman becomes that Brahmajnana, Brahma Jijnasa, Jnatum, that knowledge of Brahman becomes what? Becomes what is gained through that Brahma Sutra. That becomes Bodhya. So in that word, Atato Brahma Jijnasa. And also the word Atha is there. Atha says, since the Upanishad itself tells you. So that our word Atha also becomes part of that Sambandha. Since the Upanishad itself. And the Upanishad becomes the means to know, it becomes the Pramana. And because the Upanishad is that Pramana, and Brahmasutra is nothing but the Upanishad Vakyas arranged together in the form of Sutras to help us gain that comprehension of the knowledge of Brahman. And then Sambandha being the Bodhya Bodhaka Bhava, thus you have the Brahmasutra, which is the Upanishads itself, presented to us by Bhagavan Veda Vyasa. This Brahmasutra becomes the Bodhaka, and then that knowledge of Brahman becomes the Bodhya. Thus the first sutra contains the Anubandha Chatushtaya also. Then in tomorrow's session, we will start the sutra we are supposed to study in this Janmadyadhikarana Yataha.